First of all, Minister, I'd like to thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Of course.
The BC Review Board decision in Allan Schoenborn case is an insult to his victims and should trigger a systemic review of the BC government. Pretty strong words.
Yeah, and I think fitting, and I think most people's reaction to this, their words are a lot stronger than that. You know, this is a person who took 3 beautiful little kids away, killed them. He was deemed not criminally responsible, but the system has to protect victims and has to protect community safety first and foremost. And I think we have a failure here, that just a few short years after 3 little kids were killed, that the killer is being offered the opportunity to have day passes. And I think at the core there's just a failure of justice and a failure of people's sense of justice. And equally, I think there's a failure of appreciation for what the impact of this is on victims. And I think that this needs to trigger a review of the BC Review approach to dealing with people who are not criminally responsible. And I hope the provincial government takes that to heart.
Where do you see the systemic failure? Where does it lie?
Well, there are some approaches that I think that can be changed. You know, the federal government, we write the law, but it's up to the provincial governments to apply the law and to enforce the law. And in the application of the law that we have in Canada, I think clearly there is too much power in the hands of too few people at the BC Review Board. When we're dealing with high-risk offenders or people who have in the past clearly been involved in the most violent and ugly crimes that one can imagine, I think that there needs to be a more robust approach of filtering these cases so that public safety and the victims' interests are taken to heart. And the very fact that victims are not at the heart of the system, the entirety of this process is all about Allan Schoenborn. What's in his interest? What is going to happen with his mental health? What kind of infrastructure can we put around him? And the victim is an afterthought. Community safety is an afterthought. And I think that is a serious failure that needs to be addressed.
Looking at the current legislation, were the hands of the BC Review Board tied in this? Did they have any other choice to make today?
Sure. I mean, they could have rejected it, out of hand, just quite simply. But also through federal legislation that we passed a legislation called the Not Criminally Responsible Reform Act, Bill C-14, which empowers families to pursue and empowers Crown to pursue the application of a dangerous offender status on people who have been involved in very violent crimes. I mean, there are times when somebody can be deemed not criminally responsible for nonviolent crimes or other kinds of crimes, but when somebody has been clearly involved and is responsible for, has been designated as somebody who is a dangerous offender, then there's a whole different process that can now be applied to that person. And the family is now going to try to appeal this process and to get that dangerous offender status applied to Allan Schoenborn so that these day passes can be revoked. And I hope that they do pursue that avenue, and I hope that they are successful, because it's just, I think, a gut sense of justice that somebody who took the lives of 3 little kids, he took their lives, and that he could have access to the community and get day passes. I think there's just a element of that that's gross to the average person and a sense of injustice.
Minister, what are you hearing from your constituents?
Broad-based outrage. The fact that victims are not at the core of the system, the offender is at the core of the system, the process is all about the offender, it's never about the community safety, it seems to never be about the victim. I think people in the community here in Coquitlam and Port Coquitlam and Port Moody, everybody here is outraged that justice has been failed in this process and that victims are not being taken seriously. And we've put in place reforms that try to put the victim at the center of the system, but the application of the law through the BC Review process does not do that, and it needs to change. Thank you.